Sorry.
No, it's my fault. Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah. Gosh, that was a rough year for me.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but RST's always kind of been on my radar. And, you know, I liked kind of the anatomic basis of everything back then. And kind of through the years, I've kind of always kind of gravitated back towards you and your teaching, because I've myself kind of gone through traditional golf instruction and have been very frustrated with it. And I can, you know, personally admit to going to a lesson and getting told to do things that you know, frankly, I didn't really think I should be doing, or thought that it could really hurt myself. Or, you know, I've been told, you know, don't let the club turn over. You want to keep it square, things like that. So I'm kind of a skeptic, kind of, I think, as you are. And I kind of actually kind of shy away from a lot of traditional golf instruction, because to me, it's just not what I'm trying to do in my golf swing.
Yeah. So now, as an orthopedic surgeon, do you have an area of focus?
Mostly shoulders and knees, primarily.
Okay. So have you, the stuff that you were being taught, did any of that stuff kind of ring alarm bells in your head?
Well, I can just think, just from a personal standpoint, I felt like some, you know, some back pain, to be honest with you, because I was told, you know, I need to really rotate my chest really hard. And I just conceptually, I was like, well, I don't think I need to be working this hard in my golf swing to try to get the ball to go somewhere. And gosh, it kind of seems like I'm putting a lot of stress on my body for not a lot of output, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, this little thing only weighs 1.5 ounces.
Yeah.
It doesn't need a lot of power. There's no kinetic energy. It's just sitting still. Like that type of stuff has just driven me nuts, as you know, for, you know, teaching people to rotate their body through and putting that shear force on the spine. It's something you can do for a little bit while you're young. You may still feel like some soreness and whatever, but people just kind of tend to accept that, like, oh, it's just part of golf, you know, you're going to be sore or whatever. But as you know, I vehemently disagree with that. You know, it's so much more efficient to post up and let the club release. There's so much energy there. So.
Absolutely. And if you, as I've studied the golf swing, I mean, obviously you see that in every good ball striker, especially the guys now who hit it a ton. Like Rory, for example, he and I are about the same size. You and I are probably about the same size. I don't weigh more than about $160. The guy, he's hitting it further than guys that outweigh him by 50 pounds, because he's obviously using the ground and using leverage and kind of just maxing out everything he can.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to be a big, strong guy, like you said, to hit the ball a long ways. And that type of stuff, again, I think there's two different issues here. One, people receive bad information, right? And they're just being taught, and it's just out of ignorance, is the simple truth of the matter. And then the second thing is when people start believing that there's like some simple quick fix, you know?
Right.
The simple reality is that if golf was easy, none of us would play it. Right? We don't play chutes and ladders and go fish with cards anymore because it's not a challenge. But the cool thing is, with what you're doing and getting back into, and I hear the story a lot, people, it's tempting, right? To be like, okay, I know what RST is, I know what it stands for and why it's there, and I understand that there's work that has to be done. But gosh, if there was just a pill I could take, I would be all over it, right? And so people tend to kind of go off and like, oh, I'm going to try doing it a different way, or try, you know, different tips and quick fixes, and then they always kind of end up coming back. And we've seen that happen a lot over the years. So
yeah, I mean, I'll say, so just to transition my game, I play to a 6 handicap. Okay. But interestingly, I feel like I've never been a really good ball striker. My ball striking, I feel like, has gotten worse in the last year, but I've really had to rely on my short game and my putting and minimizing the big numbers. And so by default, I've actually learned how to play the game, and my scores have actually gotten better, even though my ball striking, in my opinion, has gotten worse or less consistent. And so I really struggle with my iron play. I hit very few greens. I tend to hit the ball thin and usually on the heel. And then even with the driver, I feel like I tend to hit it low on the face and don't ever feel like I really hit a lot of shots solidly throughout the course of a round. But again, I can kind of scrape it around and shoot 80. If I'm really playing well, I can shoot 76. If I kind of start compounding some mistakes or don't get up and down, I can shoot 85.
Yeah.
And then I think specifically, and I did a boot camp back in November. That was really good. I think it was the second one. The problems or the issues I've had, and I'll also say I was supposed to come in Colorado right at the end of March, I think, right when all this craziness started.
Oh no.
So I was really bummed about that because I was really looking forward to spending some time with you.
Yeah.
But here we are. We figured out a way.
Next best thing, right?
But specifically, I feel like I make a pretty good backswing and I can get into a pretty good backswing position. I've just always struggled with the transition in the post up. Like in the boot camp, for example, I feel like I'm a pretty good athlete, played a lot of sports, played college tennis. If you tell me to get into a position, I can get into it.
Yeah.
What I felt in the boot camp is as I was going through the reps and we were going through the live sessions, I could feel 10 different things in the transition and still get to the same place.
Yeah.
And the same thing is probably true of the post up. So then my problem is taking that out with the club, with the ball. And so basically every time I go out to play golf, I've got like a different feel or a different swing thought about how to try to transition and post up.
Yep.
And, you know, depending on how it's working on the range, I'll just kind of go with it.
Yeah.
I'll change the feels throughout the round, you know, and so it's just, you know, obviously that's not the way I want to be playing golf. But specifically, I guess I have an issue with trying to blend. I know what I need to do. I know there's a lateral weight shift. I know that I got to rotate my hips back to square. I know that I got to post up and that the hips go up and back, and that's what takes the club down and out. And I can feel, I was a high jumper in high school, played a lot of basketball. So the squat and the jump and using leverage feels really natural to me. And I can feel that that's where the power comes from, or the speed, and that I don't have to necessarily work so hard. But I guess my own assessment is I probably aren't getting my hip back enough as I go up, and that's probably why I hit it thin and maybe in the heel. But some days I'll think about a lateral weight shift. Sometimes I'll think about the squat and the jump. Sometimes I'll think about rotating. But I've never felt like the rotation ever felt very powerful to me. It actually feels the opposite. It feels really weak for me to just rotate from the top. Sure. And I played last week and I felt like I spun out of a couple shots and just hit these big blocks. And then if right when that happens, I'll compensate, and I know the lower body then stalls, and then I swing all arms and I hit a pull hook. And so I got a two-way miss because I have a hard time syncing my arms and my body, and then probably theoretically trying to figure out exactly what I'm trying to do with my lower body in my transition and downswing.
Perfect. So let me explain what's most likely happening. Obviously, I haven't seen your swing, but the simple truth of the matter is when people kind of mention the same things, going through the same problems of having, as you mentioned, kind of 10 different feelings to get into the same position at impact, what's really happening there typically is that the load in the backswing is not right. And it doesn't mean that you didn't load up your lower body right per se, but it can mean that you loaded up your arms too much too soon, or too much at the wrong spot, or not enough load in the hips, or the left side gets too passive and you can't get back over. And so it's typically, it may feel like, gosh, I've just got a bunch of balls up in the air. I'm just trying to pick one for that day to play with. But really what it comes down to is just understanding that if you load correctly in the backswing, then a lot of the downswing stuff will truly happen almost completely automatically. Not completely, you still have to understand what you're trying to do.
Sure.
But it will be so much more natural when that stuff happens correctly in the backswing. So that's going to be the first place that we're going to check, is just to see, like, did the arms start to run away in the backswing and you build tension in the shoulders, and it happens so fast that you can't really feel it unless you're being super careful monitoring that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Because then the lower body doesn't have a chance. No matter, you can try, But like, as you said, if you're not clearing your hips out enough, typically that's a time thing. You just physically don't have enough time because your arms are firing too soon because they loaded too early in the backswing. And so it's typically, you know, one of these things is kind of stacking on, and then it builds and builds and builds, and then that's where you're off. But the good thing is it's not usually that big of a deal to fix. You just have to understand the true cause.
And that makes sense. I mean, I think that I'm kind of built, I've got skinny legs and broad shoulders, and I think I can feel I've got some tension in my upper body, and I know that I, you know, tend to kind of power it probably more with the upper body, and I really need to use the lower body more. And then I also know I can move my arms fast, I can move my hips fast. Again, I was a sprinter, I can move fast. I guess the problem is I've had a hard time sequencing it, because it's like, well, my hips can move fast and I'll spin out, or my arms can move fast and I'll hit a pull hook. And so it's like, and I guess some of that tension in my upper body comes from not trusting, as you've said before, not trusting that if I let the arms chill out and let things load and fire properly, there's plenty of speed and plenty of power there without having to feel like I gotta like go wail on it with my arms and my shoulders and whatnot.
Honestly, that's the biggest mind trick with rotary swing, and just a powerful, efficient golf swing in general, is it really is going to feel like you're doing nothing when you do it right. And that's just so hard, especially if if you're stronger and you have more muscles in your upper body, and you can just feel like, yeah, I can get speed here. It's just the speed is wasted back here instead of down here. And then I can't, if I'm releasing it down here, then I can't control the club face down here. And so, and that typically happens too if you're describing kind of feeling like you just rotate and spin out. That is actually tends to be caused by your upper body. And that's when you don't feel that post up. And so this starts to fire, and this just feels like it's just ripping out of the way. And then you feel really out of control because you don't have that stable base anymore. And then golf becomes, it's a two-way miss. Then you're just like, I'm not really sure where this ball's going.
And then, I can feel, I know that obviously I got to accelerate and then decelerate my hips and my lower body and let all that energy transfer. And yeah, sometimes I feel like I can do it. When I feel like I make that squat move, I can feel that energy transferring, and the speed feels effortless. But then, yeah, other times I feel like everything kind of rotates through at the same time, and there was no acceleration, deceleration, and obviously there's no transfer of energy there.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure I have a pretty good idea what we're going to tackle, but I want to video a couple of your swings.
Okay.
I'm going to screen capture them. So let's get the camera set up to where I can see you.
Let me see. I gotta adjust this.
Yeah, I can just see part of you there.
Let me get a little closer. I'm trying to I'm on my laptop and I'm trying to figure out how to get. I'm only getting my upper body.
Yeah. That's a start. I can at least work with that.
Okay, I can try to go.
I can work with that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to screen capture these. So go ahead whenever you're ready. All right, that's all I needed. That's perfect.
And then down the line?
No, I don't even need it.
Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen with you real quick.
Okay.
All right. Okay, can you see this? See your video here? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So very simple to see what's going on, even in your practice swing. Watch your practice swing here. This is 100% arms and shoulders. Your lower body has barely changed at all, right?
Okay.
So if we're doing that in our practice swing, that's definitely going to probably be the same case in the full swing, at speed in general. And in this case, it definitely is. As you start going back, you actually shift your hips toward the target slightly. Can you use this tree in the background as a reference point, or maybe this window over here? and you'll see that you actually shift away from that right hip line toward the target.
Yeah.
And then you pick the club up with your arms and shoulders. You're not really turning at this point, and you can't because your pelvis isn't allowed to turn very much.
Okay.
And especially when you shift your hips kind of toward the target just a little bit, then that makes it even harder for your hips to turn. And so then you have to just pick the club up with your arms. And so you've made maybe an 80-degree turn here. And so as you come down, there's no chance of really using your legs properly. And that's absolutely where all the spin out stuff is coming from. So the cool thing is this is 100% exactly what this is, your lower body's not engaging from the very first move, inch of movement of the club. And that's what we've got to get in there. And once we get that working, then the downswing transition and stuff has a shot. But if the backswing is not loaded up right, there's just no chance. There's nothing you have left to hit with other than your arms and hands.
And that makes sense because I think what I think about in my backswing is all about that, my core and that right shoulder blade glide. And I think about that in my backswing, and then I try to focus on my lower body in the downswing. But I guess, like you said, if I don't load the lower body properly in the backswing, I guess I can't really get where I want to go after that.
It's impossible, right? We have to create a stretching in those muscle fibers, or we can't use them, right? And so right now, when you're going back and your hips are kind of frozen in place, and then the arms and shoulders start to move first, you are loading your core, more the upper part of your rib cage. You're using the lats and serratus and a bunch of muscles up here, but we need to move that down. And it needs to be from here to here, not from here up.
Okay.
And as soon as you do that, it's going to be a game changer. But it's going to feel strange for sure at first, because you're not used. Right now, when people really kind of freeze their lower body, one, it takes all the athleticism out of the swing, but two, it makes us feel like we're more in control. And it's an illusion, right? We have to really kind of give up some sort of feeling of control to truly gain control in the swing. But if I don't move my lower body and I just move my arms and hands, well, this is all my tactile sense in my daily life, right? If you're a surgeon, you trust your hands, you know exactly where they're at, you can feel where the club is. And as soon as you start moving other parts, you start transferring that control to a different part of your body that you're not used to associating with control. Honestly, in my own personal swing, I don't really talk about my personal feelings a lot, just because obviously I try not to be subjective or anecdotal about stuff. But the truth of the matter is my brain is in my left glute. That's where my focus is from the moment I start that club back. And I know that sounds strange. Some people are fixated on the club and this and that. I couldn't care less where that stuff's going, because I know if I'm just not doing anything extra with it, it has no choice but to go where it's supposed to. What I'm really focused on is not my position in the takeaway, my shoulder blade glide, the position at the top. It's whether or not I'm going to be able to get this to initiate the swing and post up correctly. Because at the end of the day, it's all that matters. I can screw up all kinds of stuff in the backswing as long as it's in the right zip code, but I can't screw this up. If this doesn't fire, if this doesn't load during the transition and engage and post up in the downswing, then you have to use your arms and hands, and there's no way around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So what I want you to do is we're going to do some exercises to kind of get this woken up.
Okay.
And then we're going to start transferring where your focus is away from the golf club and into your hips.
Okay.
So the first thing I want you to do is, we have to kind of do this progressive in a couple little steps. The first thing is to really exaggerate some of this stuff, because your hips are frozen and we're going to wake them up. So you said you played a lot of other sports. Obviously you're fit, you're athletic. As you play any hitting or throwing sport, if you feel how you rotate back to throw a ball, the truth of the matter is a big exaggeration. But when you start to feel what's really happening here, you start to understand the kinematic sequence of the golf swing, right? Loading up these big, if I was a pitcher getting ready to throw a ball and I'm winding up, I'm not loading up my arm first, right? But that's what you're doing in your swing by just doing this, right? Now we're going to get you to feel this. So I'm actually going to have you stand up, make a big exaggerated move, and I'm going to have you literally pick up your left foot and pivot 100% on your right leg. You're going to make a big hip turn. You're going to start to feel your glute load way different than what you're used to in your normal swing. So literally just like a baseball player, pivot on that whole right foot. There you go. Not hard, right? But now you can feel how instantly the transition is a balance move. I'm already pivoted here. I've got some wind up on this right hip socket. I've loaded that muscle and the supporting muscles on this hip. And once those are loaded, this naturally wants to happen. That's the transition, right?
Sure.
Once I transition, I'm moving weight, I'm moving pressure onto that left glute.
Yep.
That's where your brain's gonna go. You're gonna feel this left glute engage because you're going to push that puppy, squat down slightly into the ground and feel this left glute completely engage and then post up on it.
Yep.
So wind up, push, squat down a little bit as you, there you go. Do you feel the difference in the muscle engagement there? Good. So in the golf swing, this is the exact same movement. Any hitting or throwing sport, from the time that we were cavemen throwing javelins and spears and stuff, this is the kinematic sequence that we figured out the most efficient way for the human body to do this stuff. Otherwise, we're just relying on the arm musculature by itself. So if we want to use our glutes, we have to first engage them in the backswing. We have to turn our pelvis. We have to load up on this hip socket. So then it becomes natural to shift over. Now, obviously, in the swing, the hardest part about the golf swing is that the ball is static and we are static, right? You know, if you play tennis, you're always moving.
Yep.
And that's the challenge of golf, is that we have to maintain that sense of freedom and movement while our feet are planted on the ground. So when you're doing this drill,
that's the hardest thing about golf is
100%.
it's not reactionary like every other sport.
I can tell you how many guys thousands of lessons where guys get over the ball and they're just going through a pre-flight checklist and they don't realize they've been sitting over the ball for a minute. It's impossible to move dynamically and athletically at that point. Impossible. So now, as you're doing this, this is just going to be your freedom drill. You're just going to wake up and you're going to, before you hit balls, you're just going to get, hey, my legs, they got to wake up. And this is how I'm going to wake them up every day and start to feel my glutes. If you can't feel them, when you plant that weight, squat down slightly, really engage the glute. And then what we've got to do is we've got to make that step smaller, right? So right now, I'm letting you pick your whole left foot up and make a big pivot on that hip socket. And then eventually, we're just going to kind of do it, let the left heel come up. Old school Jack Nicklaus, 70s, 60s kind of golf, right? But you can do that same thing, feel the same movement, the same load in the hips, but by just lifting up your heel right now, because that makes it easy to transfer that weight. And then plant that heel on the ground and squat into it, push into it. There you go. And then post up. And then you're going to start to make this more and more like your regular golf swing. So instead of having such a big hip turn and letting this heel come up, you're still going to make the hip turn, still make the load, still feel athletic. Your heel maybe just feels light in your shoe. Maybe the heel comes up slightly. But you keep just making those movements a little bit smaller, but you still try to feel the same amount of muscular load that you do when you pick your feet up. Does that make sense?
Yep.
There you go. Now get your weight, get your hip all the way over to the left. So watch me for a second. So when you're shifting, you're doing this.
Okay.
The knee's moving, but the hip isn't.
Okay.
Hip has to go. Move your whole pelvis over that left ankle. No, still knee. Knees going outside the foot. Still knee. So you're still doing this. The knee barely moves. It's just a little bit just to get it over the ankle, but then you're really getting your weight. So think of it this way. Lift your right foot up as you come into the post up or the transition. You put all your weight on your left foot. There you go. Now how much more load do you feel in the glute?
Okay. Yeah, a lot more.
Exactly. If there's not weight there, your brain is way too efficient when it comes to loading muscle fibers. And so your brain will just be like, if there's not that much weight over there, I don't have to work that hard. So I'm going to recruit the minimum amount of muscle fiber humanly possible. But when you put all your weight over there, your brain's like, oh man, I have to really work. There you go. Feel the difference?
Yeah, and so I went and saw Chris Tyler 2 summers ago, maybe.
Okay.
You remember, I only spent a couple hours with him, but I do remember feeling like I had to make much more of a shift over to the left than I felt like I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I was having to see the same thing here. You were just kind of getting just your knee over there, but not your weight, not your hip over there. There you go. So now, as you're practicing this, I want you to be free to move around right now, right? Because you've kind of frozen your body in place. And what you're going to do is you're going to start refining these movements, still focusing on muscular recruitment, right? Muscle fibers that you're trying to engage with pressure and weight, and minimizing movement, right? So right now, I'm allowing this, your head to move a little bit off the ball, your head to move back. That's okay right now because you're waking your body up, your lower body up. Now we're going to start trying to refine that and feel, can I feel the same amount of muscle load without my head moving, and I'm just moving my pelvis now.
I can feel load in my glute, in my hamstring, and my quad right here.
Good. Yeah. Perfect.
I guess what I've seen in my video, and we kind of saw it today, is that when I make that transition move and I try to get over to the left, I've certainly seen that my torso or my head leads, or it goes along with the lower body. Is that okay?
Yes and no. So first off, your head is moved off the ball more than it would in a regular swing right now, right? So you have to balance that out. Yeah, so right there is the maximum, no more than that. So what you're going to find is that your hip is going to shift while you're turning rather than your upper torso moving to feel that same load on that right hip. There you go.
Yeah. So I felt centered, if you will, with my head and torso, but I do feel load in my right glute.
Good. Maybe that's it's hard to maybe a little bit too much hip turn, but you're in the ballpark, right? It's okay to overdo it a little bit right now. There you go. So now when you shift to the left, don't think upper body, think your pelvis moving back over to the left. There you go. Get a lot of weight on there, feel that same left hip. There you go. So now when you're practicing that wall drill where you just go and put your head up against the wall and you start to, because that's going to keep your head can move a little bit, but when you're doing the wall drill, you'd be dragging your head across the wall. So it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but at least then you're starting to focus down here because now you can't move your upper body so much to cheat, to create that pressure and load on the hips.
Should I set up where the wall's on the left side of my head?
I usually put my head literally right on a flat surface.
Got it.
There you go. So now your head barely moved at all, but I can tell that you're loaded up on the right. Good. Now you're cooking with gas. Now your lower body is leading the entire golf swing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what you need to be feeling.
That transition move where it feels like it's all lower body, that's going to create there's going to be an increase in axis tilt because of how the lower body's moving, the upper body's kind of staying back. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's what we call secondary axis tilt. So you will have a little increase there as you go into impact. And that helps shallow out the plane and shift the path. There you go.
And that lateral shift, what feels like it to me, I can really feel the shoulders staying closed because I know that's also a problem of mine because I'm so upper body driven in my swing.
Yep, 100%. Perfect. So Angela, shoot, we ran out of time already, believe it or not. But you know exactly what you need to work on now. It's all of this. That's all that matters. Don't worry about arms, swing plane, path, position, all that stuff. Focus on this for right now, and then start stacking your left arm in there and start feeling like, oh, do I start wanting to swing my arm and it takes over? This has to be 100% where your brain is. And as soon as you keep getting that and you start stacking pieces on there, just see how soft you can keep your arms and shoulders and keep the focus down here, the same load. And that's going to be how you get to the next step and get you back down to being a good ball striker again. Because this is a 180-degree flip from what you were doing 20 minutes ago.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Austin, do you mind if I share your lesson? Because a lot of people are doing the same stuff that you're doing. I think it'd be really helpful to see.
That'd be great. I think I saw a lesson that you posted where it was very similar to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, there's quite a few. Oh, thank you so much, man. I'd love to see you again soon. I got to run to the next lesson, but
Okay.
I'd love to see an update here soon.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.